The night I discovered my husband was betraying me, New York City was glowing beneath our apartment window. Millions of lights filled the streets. Yellow taxis moved through Manhattan like tiny sparks. People were laughing, rushing home, meeting friends, and living ordinary lives. But inside our apartment, my entire world was about to change. My name is Emma Carter, and for 6 years I believed I had built a happy marriage with the man I loved. His name was Daniel. He was charming, successful, confident, and, at least I thought, completely devoted to me. I trusted him with everything: my heart, my future, my home, my money, and most importantly, my secrets. I never imagined that one night a single email would show me how completely wrong I had been. It happened on a Friday night. Daniel stood near the bedroom mirror, fixing his tie. "I have a business dinner in Manhattan," he said. I looked up from my laptop. "Again?" He smiled. "It's important. Some investors are coming into town." I smiled back. "Okay, what time will you be home?" "Probably late. Don't wait up." He kissed my forehead, grabbed his coat, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. "I love you." I smiled. "I love you too." The door closed. I went back to my laptop. I wasn't worried, not even a little. Around midnight, I heard the elevator stop on our floor. I assumed Daniel was home. But my phone buzzed before I could even get up. It was an email notification. The subject line caught my attention. "Congratulations, Daniel and Sophia." I stared at the screen. Sophia? Who was Sophia? At first I thought it was probably a business contact, maybe an investor, maybe someone from his company. I opened the email. It was a reservation confirmation from an expensive restaurant in Manhattan. The reservation was under Daniel's name. The guest name was Sophia Bennett. My heart started beating faster. I tried to convince myself there was a simple explanation. Then another email arrived. This one contained photographs. I opened the first one. Daniel was standing outside the restaurant. His arm was around a woman, a beautiful woman with long dark hair. She was smiling at him, but that wasn't what hurt the most. It was the way Daniel was looking at her. I knew that look, because I remembered when he used to look at me that way. I zoomed in. It was Sophia. Then I noticed the date. The photograph wasn't from that night. There were dozens of photographs attached. Daniel and Sophia at restaurants. Daniel and Sophia walking through Central Park. Daniel and Sophia shopping. Daniel and Sophia entering a hotel. One photograph showed them holding hands. Another showed Daniel kissing her forehead. My hands became cold. I kept scrolling. Then I saw a photograph that made everything suddenly clear. Daniel was holding a small velvet box. Underneath the picture was a message. "Soon she won't be in our way anymore." I read that sentence 3 times. She. They were talking about me. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I sat completely still. The apartment was silent. The city outside was still moving. But inside me, something had stopped. Daniel wasn't simply cheating on me. He was planning a future with another woman, and apparently I was the only obstacle standing in his way. I should have cried. I should have screamed. I should have called him immediately. Instead, something strange happened. My tears stopped. I became completely calm. I looked at the photograph again. Then I whispered to myself, "Okay, Daniel." I took a slow breath. "If that's the game you want to play, I'll play." I didn't know it yet, but that moment would change my life. Daniel came home at 1:37 in the morning. I was sitting on the couch with the lights off. The moment he opened the door, he froze. "Emma?" I looked at him. "Hi." He smiled nervously. "You're still awake?" "Couldn't sleep." He took off his coat and placed it on a chair. "How was your night?" I asked. He hesitated for half a second. "Long. Business dinner." I nodded. "Of course." He walked over and kissed my cheek. I almost pulled away, but I didn't. Instead, I studied him. His expensive watch, his perfectly pressed shirt, the faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine. I had known this man for 6 years. I knew his habits. I knew the way he spoke when he was nervous. I knew the way he avoided eye contact when he was hiding something. And suddenly I realized how many warning signs I had ignored. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the passwords he had suddenly changed, the business trips that never seemed to have clear details, the way he always kept his phone face down, the way he smiled at messages but never showed me the screen. I had explained everything away because I loved him. Daniel sat beside me. You okay? I looked at him. I'm fine. He smiled. Good. He had no idea. He thought I knew nothing, and that gave me an advantage. The next morning I didn't confront him. Instead, I started checking our finances. Daniel had always told me that our money was safe. He said we had a joint savings account. He said our investments were growing. He said everything was under control. But when I logged into our account, I noticed something strange. Nearly $42,000 was missing. I checked the transaction history. There were hotel payments, luxury restaurants, jewelry stores, and then I found something much worse, a transfer of $75,000. It had been moved from one of our investment accounts into a private account. The account belonged to Daniel. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just an affair. He was preparing financially to leave me. I spent the entire afternoon documenting everything. I saved bank statements, screenshots, receipts, emails, photographs. Every piece of evidence went into a folder. I named the folder Truth. Then I called an attorney. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family. I simply asked the attorney what I should do if my husband was secretly moving money and preparing to leave the marriage. The answer changed everything. Don't confront him until you understand your legal and financial position. So I didn't. That night, Daniel came home smiling. He placed a shopping bag on the table. I got you something. I opened it. Inside was an expensive designer handbag. For a second, I almost laughed. He was buying me gifts while secretly building another life. I looked at him. It's beautiful. He smiled. I knew you'd like it. I hugged him and quietly said, "Thank you." He had no idea that the woman he thought was blind had finally opened her eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, I became the calmest version of myself. Daniel expected emotional questions. He expected jealousy. He expected me to become suspicious. Instead, I became unusually supportive. When he said he had another business dinner, I smiled. Have fun. When he said he needed to travel, I said, of course. When his phone buzzed and he turned the screen away from me, I pretended not to notice. But behind the scenes, everything was changing. Through my attorney, I hired a financial investigator. We discovered that Daniel had been planning something much bigger than an affair. He had been preparing to transfer ownership of one of our most valuable investments, a property in Manhattan. The property had been purchased before our marriage, but during our years together, both of us had contributed to its renovation, taxes, and expenses. Daniel planned to sell it. He wanted to use the money to build a new life with Sophia. Then we discovered something else. Sophia wasn't simply Daniel's girlfriend. She was connected to his business. And she had been encouraging him to leave me for months. One message said, "She trusts you too much. She'll never see it coming." Another said, "Once you get the money, we can finally start over." I stared at those messages for a long time. I was hurt, angry, humiliated, but beneath all those emotions was something stronger: determination. Daniel had underestimated me, but I wasn't interested in revenge that involved screaming, threats, or destroying someone's life. I wanted something much simpler. I wanted the truth to become impossible to hide. So I made a plan. First, protect my finances. Second, protect the property. Third, document every piece of evidence. Fourth, let Daniel believe his plan was working. And finally, let him face the consequences of his own choices. I continued living normally. I cooked dinner. I went to work. I smiled. I asked about his day. Sometimes I even kissed him goodbye. But inside, I was preparing. Then one Friday afternoon, Daniel came into the kitchen. "We need to talk tonight." I looked up. "About what?" He took a deep breath. "Our marriage." My heart started beating faster, but my voice remained calm. "Okay." He sat down. "I think we've grown apart." There it was, the sentence I knew was coming. For years, I had imagined how I would react if my marriage ever ended. I thought I would cry. I thought I would beg. I thought I would ask him what I had done wrong. Instead, I simply asked, "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." I took a slow breath. "Okay." His face changed. He clearly hadn't expected that answer. "That's it?" I looked at him. "You made your decision." He stared at me. "You're not going to fight for us?" I almost smiled. Daniel, you already decided what you wanted. He looked uncomfortable. I think this is for the best. I nodded. Maybe it is. 2 days later, Daniel brought divorce papers. He placed them on the dining table. I think this is the cleanest way. I looked at the papers, then I looked at him. Is Sophia worth it? His face went completely pale. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. What? He finally whispered. You heard me. He sat down. Emma, I don't know what you're talking about. I picked up my phone. I showed him the first photograph. Daniel and Sophia outside the Manhattan Hotel. His face changed immediately. Then I showed him another. Then another. Finally, I placed the financial records on the table. The missing money, the secret transfers, the property documents, everything. Daniel stared at the papers. How did you... I interrupted him. You should have asked yourself that question before betraying me. His voice became desperate. Emma, please listen. No. I looked directly into his eyes. For once, you listen. He started explaining. He said the marriage had been unhappy. He said Sophia understood him. He said he had been confused. He said he never wanted to hurt me. I listened. Then I asked him one question. If you were unhappy, why didn't you tell me? He had no answer. Because there was no good answer. People often say betrayal happens because something is missing, but sometimes betrayal happens because someone wants more while still keeping what they already have. Daniel wanted Sophia. He wanted the money. He wanted the property. And he wanted me to walk away quietly. That was the part he had gotten wrong. I pushed the divorce papers back toward him. You don't get to decide how this ends. He looked at me. What does that mean? It means we'll do everything legally, everything fairly, and everything honestly. His expression changed. You're trying to punish me. I stood up. No, Daniel. I looked directly into his eyes. I'm letting your choices speak for themselves. For the first time since I discovered the betrayal, Daniel looked afraid. The next week was strangely peaceful. Daniel moved into a hotel. He kept calling me. Sometimes he apologized. Sometimes he blamed me. Sometimes he promised he would change. But I stopped listening to promises. I listened to actions. Meanwhile, my attorney handled the legal side of everything. The property was protected. The accounts were carefully reviewed. The money Daniel had secretly moved was documented. Then something unexpected happened. Sophia contacted me. At first I didn't answer. She called again, then again. Finally I answered. Her voice was nervous. Emma? Yes. I think we need to talk. I said nothing. She continued. Daniel told me you're making everything difficult. I almost smiled. Everything difficult? Yes. He says you're trying to ruin his future. I replied calmly. Did he tell you about the money? Silence. What money? I sent her one document, then another. There was a long pause. Finally she said, He told me the money was already his. I closed my eyes. There it was. The truth. Daniel had lied to both of us. He had told Sophia that our finances were already separated. He had told her the Manhattan property belonged entirely to him. He had told her the divorce would be easy. He had told her I would walk away quietly. But she was discovering that Daniel's perfect story wasn't real. Then Sophia said something I never expected. Emma, I think he lied to me too. I know. She started crying. Did he ever love you? I looked out the window at Manhattan. I don't know anymore. She was silent. I continued. You made your choices. Now you have to make your own decision. Then I ended the call. A few days later, Daniel discovered that Sophia had stopped answering his messages. His perfect new life was collapsing. But I hadn't destroyed it. He had. One lie at a time. 3 weeks later, Daniel asked to meet me. He wanted one final conversation. We met at a quiet restaurant in Manhattan, the same city where he had once taken Sophia, the same city where I had discovered the truth. Daniel looked different. He looked tired, defeated. He sat across from me. I lost everything. I looked at him. You lost what you chose to lose. He lowered his head. Sophia left. I didn't respond. She found out everything. Still, I said nothing. He continued. She said she couldn't trust me. I looked at him. Now you understand how I felt. He stared at me. For a moment I saw the man I had married, the man who once held my hand during our wedding, the man who promised he would always be honest, but that man had made choices, and choices have consequences. Daniel reached across the table. Can we start over? I slowly moved my hand away. No. He looked hurt. Why? Because I don't want the old life anymore. You said you loved me. I did. Then why can't you forgive me? I took a breath. Forgiveness doesn't mean giving someone access to you again. He became silent. I continued. I forgive you because I don't want to carry your betrayal for the rest of my life. But that doesn't mean I want you back. Daniel looked down, and for the first time he understood. My revenge wasn't destroying him. My revenge was becoming someone who no longer needed him. I left the restaurant. Outside, New York was alive. People were walking, taxis were passing, lights were shining from buildings above me, and for the first time in months, I felt free. The divorce was finalized several months later. The finances were settled fairly. The property was protected. The money Daniel had moved was properly accounted for. I moved into a smaller apartment with a beautiful view of the city. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was mine. I started traveling. I returned to hobbies I had abandoned. I reconnected with friends. I started spending time with people who made me feel like myself again, and most importantly, I learned how to trust myself again. Then one morning, almost a year after everything happened, I received an email from Daniel. The subject line said, "I finally understand." I almost deleted it, but I opened it. He wrote about regret. He wrote about the mistakes he had made. He said he had lost the best person in his life. He said he finally understood that the problem wasn't simply that he wanted a different life. The problem was that he tried to build that life through lies. I read the message once, then I closed it. I didn't respond. Because sometimes silence is the strongest answer you can give. A year after the night everything began, I was walking through Central Park. The same place where Daniel had once walked with Sophia, but this time I was alone, and I was smiling. I stopped beside a bench and looked around. People were walking their dogs. Children were laughing, couples were talking. Musicians were playing nearby. Life was moving forward. And suddenly, I realized something. For months, I had thought my revenge would be making Daniel regret what he did. But I had been wrong. My real revenge was rebuilding a life so peaceful that his betrayal no longer controlled my emotions. He wanted me to believe I wasn't enough. Instead, I discovered that I had been enough all along. He wanted me to walk away broken. Instead, I walked away stronger. He thought he was replacing me, but he was really losing me. And there is a difference. Looking back, I don't remember the expensive gifts Daniel bought me. I don't remember every argument. I don't remember the exact words he used when he tried to explain himself. What I remember is the moment I looked at the evidence and realized something important. I had trusted the wrong person. But that didn't mean I had to stop trusting myself. Betrayal can make you question everything, your judgment, your memories, your worth. You start wondering, how did I not see it? Was I not good enough? Was something wrong with me? But the truth is, someone else's dishonesty does not determine your value. Daniel's choices were about Daniel, not me. And maybe that's the lesson I needed most. When someone betrays you, don't rush to destroy them. Don't let anger control your next move. Protect yourself. Learn the truth. Document what matters. Get the right advice. And then walk away with your dignity. Because the greatest revenge isn't watching someone else fall. It's refusing to fall with them. Daniel thought my life would end when our marriage ended. He was wrong. My life actually began again. Sometimes the person who breaks your heart accidentally gives you the freedom you were too afraid to choose for yourself. So if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, remember this. You don't have to become cruel to become strong. You don't have to destroy someone to win. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply this. You heal, you grow, you move forward, and one day you look back and realize they didn't destroy your life. They only showed you where your new life needed to begin. That was the revenge Daniel never expected. And honestly, it was the only revenge I ever needed.